All right, so those of you who are regulars know Gina Swinney, and those of you who don't, I just want to introduce you to her. So the format that we've developed flows out of, and I actually had to go back and look. It was March 22nd of 2020 when our world changed as we know it. And I still remember, and we all have our memories, right? What I remember is walking out after receiving a letter from the Northern Illinois Conference bishop that said you are not allowed to have a service this Sunday. And as United Methodists, we followed the guidance and direction of the government and also best practices, it was called. And I still remember walking out, and on the table out there were the Sunday bulletins that never got used. and that was the start of a life-changing, and for many, all too many, a life-ending event. So that was Friday. So Sunday, I believe, I put up a microphone in my office. And I did church, and it was weird, just by myself. And so then we started to scramble, a lot of places. We started to scramble, and one thing led to another, and so then first I came in here because they wanted the backdrop of some religious iconography, and so then we thought, well, we'll expand it, and so Gina and we thought, well, we'll kind of tag team on the service a little bit. And one of the very funny things was Lynn, who did the great job of singing over here, said, well, because we didn't know what we were doing, we said, well, we'll put it up on Facebook as a trial because it was like 7:30 in the morning or something, and we'll just put this up there as a trial because the church had no followers anyway, But Lynn had lots of followers and didn't realize that instead of putting it up on the church Facebook, she was putting it up on her personal Facebook, which may have been the largest viewing we ever had. And just because we are who we are, Gina and I just had started by singing Sisters. We are such devoted sisters from White Christmas. And so all of a sudden, we realized that our little duet is going out to the free world, and that was the start of not knowing what we're doing in the electronic world. But that was also the start of my realizing that all too often the pastor, be they male or be they female, but in my case particularly being a male, that all too often it's just male, male, male. And so if I say the opening words and I do this and I do that, and it's like, gosh, you see an awful lot of him, that I invited Gina to, would you like to share some thoughts, some reflections around what the general direction that I'm going to go? And so, well, sometimes you get all the applause, though. I've noticed that. And so it's 200 times now.
Wow.
200 times. I did the rough math between my being not here sometimes and I figure it's safe to say 200 times now.
Wow.
You've stood there and you've done your opening thoughts. So wrote down some notes. And you're terrific, at sharing those thoughts on the topic that I choose. That's the the old thing that they said, like, well, Fred Astaire was such a great dancer. Well, but they said, yeah, but Ginger Rogers was doing the same thing backwards in high heels. So you're like Ginger Rogers. You're doing it backwards in heels. So it was important to me to have the visual and the reality of balanced leadership. So and I. So I've asked you ahead of time to give this some thought. So removing yourself from the one that was doing it, what do you see as the importance of a shared platform?
Well, I think it's important that girls get to see women in leadership roles, particularly in areas of faith leadership, because that's so predominantly led by men. And God speaks to all of us. God works through all of us, actually I believe, through all of his creation. So to have the balance, right, of male and female, I think is important, particularly as society grows and morphs, you see more balance between men and women in traditional roles, right? Balance is a good thing. More men are taking care of children, taking care of the house, and women are working, and so it's a shared relationship as opposed to a hierarchy. And so I think that that's important. The other distributive leadership, right, allows, you don't have to carry the whole load, right? And it's true in our committee work too. We work together. We have chairs of our committees, because that's the way the United Methodist system is structured, but we share that leadership, and that means that not one person has to do it all. And I think you get better output when more people have had input. When more people are involved, more people are involved. You know what I'm saying? When more people are involved, there's more involvement of commitment and heart and all of those things.
Well, as I said, you've done a terrific job. So you've spent, I don't think letting the cat out of the bag here, you've spent 50 plus years sitting on that side and not participating up on this side. And during those years, you and I and everyone who's been in the 50 plus range and even in the 40 plus range have witnessed the great surge of the church. The surge that began, in my estimation, in the 60s, and there's some reasons for that. And over the last 20 years, then, you and I have witnessed a significant contraction that's taken place. This used to be the norm. You know, you guys had choirs on both sides, and, you know, 2 services and all the bells and all the whistles. So for those who have never attended church, which we're now in that third generation where, you know, so we had the parents that went and brought the kids, and the kids kind of went out of obligation, but then their kids are like, well, no, what's the point of this whole thing? So we're now in that third generation. For those who have never really attended church at all, or at least go only every once in a great while, what do you think the biggest misconception about church is?
Well, I've been a member of this church for 46 years, but I was baptized Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
So they're kind of at 2 extreme ends of the faith, but I've been a part of both of those congregations. And I also, Emery and I raised the kids in the church, and that's not been part of their, so this is a question that I've really, really, really thought about. I don't know that I don't know that there are misconceptions. I think that the church is seen by younger generations as not necessarily being in the world what we say we want to be in the world, right? So we are a flawed institution. Church is a flawed institution because it's made up of humans. And historically, the church hasn't exactly been the face of Jesus in the world, right? When we look back through history, you know, there's a lot of things that we should apologize for to a lot of people, right? And you know, we laugh a little bit once in a while about the squeak. You know, I had church clothes. right?
Me.
And I'm getting some head nods out there. There were clothes that you wore to church, and as soon as you got home, you took them off and you put on your play clothes, right? And that it was important to have your ducks in a row, everybody's clean, everybody's well-behaved, and everybody's in there as a family.
Smiling.
And the reality was, in each of those families, there was strife, there was pain, there was discord, there was disharmony, but heaven forbid that be shown to people at church. And boy, if anybody at church found out about that, that wasn't necessarily good either. So I'm kind of defending some of the attitudes about church because I don't think they're all misconceptions.
Right.
I think that they are reality. But having said that, there is not a place in my life where I feel more welcomed and loved and cared for than in my church family. Now, yes, my family, of course. I'm retired. I worked for 35 years. I could not talk about Jesus at work, right? That would have gotten me in trouble. I could not profess, although I have to say I was an English teacher, and there's a lot of Christian symbolism in literature, so I was able to kind of get some of it in that way. But there's really not another place where you can sit down with a group of people and have good conversations about what you believe and ask questions about what you believe. And I think people who aren't a part of a congregation, that's something that they miss. Plus, many of us are built to be people of service, right? We want to help. And the church is just built for that. There are ways that you can help other people. It's part of the DNA of a church. And so that's another thing. But I guess there's a line from Hamlet that says, there is more to heaven and earth, Horatio, than is dreamt of in your philosophy. And to me, that says that there is so much mystery in faith. And if we were to take the time and have each of you give an example, I'm sure many of you have had things happen in your lives and you go, that was interesting. Or, a God moment. That's another phrase that we use a lot. And we don't really, unless we've got really good friends who will let us have those kinds of moments, church is where we can really, because our faith is a heart thing. Methodist, it's a head thing a lot, but it's really about our connection at the heart level, and we don't have an opportunity to really have that explained to us, either through our pastor or talked about. So those are the things that I think people who don't attend church. And then I would say, I was 22 when I joined this church, so if you do the math, you can figure out how old I am. And I wasn't married, and I didn't have children. And I can't tell you how much and I didn't grow up, I grew up in somewhat of an unusual family. I didn't grow up in the Leave It to Beaver kind of family. And I so appreciated the people who showed me how to parent, who showed me how to act in a meeting, who showed me the modeling that I got through the people in this church, and some of you are sitting here today. I wouldn't have gotten that anywhere else.
Yeah, Beaver didn't grow up in a Leave It to Beaver house either.
I know.
We found that out later. So you kind of touched on it, but given the reality of the perceptions, why would someone want to come and be a part of a dysfunctional group of people?
Well,
I changed the last question a little bit on you.
because we're trying to be better.
Okay.
And we're honestly trying to be better. We acknowledge that we're not perfect, but we also acknowledge that we have a Savior who showed us the way, and we are trying to be better. And that's the one thing that I really like about church now is the authenticity. I think we're pretty authentic with each other. We don't expect people to be perfect, and we help them when we can. And if there's been any change from the pre-COVID years, I'd like to think that we come to church now. You may have noticed, if you've been a church member for a long time, we don't have acolytes come in and light the candles, right? I just do that, and that grew out of COVID. There's a lot of the stuff that was more ritualistic pre-COVID that we don't do now, but it doesn't mean that our commitment is any less. It's just we've kind of become a little bit more authentic.
Yeah, another change people might notice is that we don't pass a plate, because one of the things that churches have learned is that they have the misperception, correct perception perhaps, that all churches want our money. But the other piece to add on to what you said, I would say that one of the reasons that I hope people participate in a church or somewhere is because our efforts, 1 + 1 does not equal 2. And when we come here, like I said, we're able to do a lot of things. I'm going to mention some of them in my message that are not possible as individuals, but as a collective group, we're able to do. And as a United Methodist Church, we're involved in mission around the world, where if I'm just sitting at home watching, Josh, whatever his name is, I forgot right now. But I wouldn't be participating, in that worldwide, or even, all the mission ministries that the Methodist Church has in Chicago. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the other thing that I feel very strongly about is the power of prayer. And when you mentioned exponential, we're part of our service today. We will lift up some prayer requests, and the idea, the hope, is that you guys will keep this in your prayer circle during the week, right? That you'll take it home, and you might not all do that, but exponentially, even if 2 or 3 of us do that, that's more than if nobody does it, right? So church also gives us an opportunity to have and feel the power of prayer.
Amen. Thank you.